Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here. Just wanted to jump on tonight. Sorry I didn't give you all more notice, but got home late and at least tried to get on at 8:40, so I'm running a little bit late. But thanks for your patience. You guys are great. Um, and let me just say that at the outset, as far as the defense motions go, those were filed here a few days ago by Donna's counsel. And the motions in limine, which are motions that the judge considers before it goes to the jury, before counsel have their opening statements, so they know what's coming in and what's not, so they can properly argue what to consider for the jury that they expect the evidence to show. And so those kind of motions that I've seen, there a lot of them are repeats of the kind of stuff we saw for Charlie that were in toto denied by Judge Everett. So a lot of these are the same. They're just tweaked a little bit with Donna's name instead of Charlie's, and then they put a little bit different language in there because she didn't have the same standing as Charlie, like for example in the wiretaps. But I can just tell by looking at those motions, which I'm not going to list every one of them tonight. If you guys have specific questions, I'll answer them. But I can just tell you, looking at the motions, the way they're written by the lawyers, I can just tell that they can see the writing on the wall, which is that these things are not going to be granted by the judge. The one about the courtroom being too large, they want to have a smaller courtroom. That one's like a really another frivolous type of motion. But maybe the judge will throw him a bone on something like that. But my prediction is that all these other motions are going to be denied by the defense, and all that evidence is going to come in. The very damning evidence, I might add, against Donna Adelson and her involvement in the murder against Professor Dan Markell that occurred over 10 years ago now. So she's finally coming up for trial here next month on the 17th of September. And so in any event, I'll have Brother John, my producer, is going to be down there. He's going to be piping in to do a live stream. So I plan to cover all day coverage, and I probably will also cover jury selection. A lot of the jury selection is held in a smaller breakout room from the main jury room, where they ask more private, individualized questions for each of the jurors. So those are not open to the media with the cameras, but they do allow select individuals in at different times to take notes with no cameras. And John got to take part in that for Charlie's trial at different portions. So I intend to just, if I do go down, I'll only be down there for the actual closing arguments like I did last time. But this one is so much going to be a repeat of Charlie's trial that it's going to be not a whole lot of new wrinkles that really make it worthwhile to invest the time and money to make that long trip. And it's going to be excellent, excellent work by by Georgia and Sarah that are going to be against Donna. And Donna's going to wind up in the same situation of Charlie, her son, the former dentist, which is she's going to be convicted of all three charges, which is murder in the first degree, which carries life without parole. She's also going to be convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, and she's also going to be convicted of the solicitation. And a lot of that is through actual circumstantial type of evidence. You don't need direct evidence for a conviction of anyone on any type of crime charged in the United States. And basically, because there's no distinction between direct and circumstantial, the counsel can make arguments. A lot of it's just common sense, and a lot of it's just connecting the dots, making sure that the evidence all fits together nicely, and it really paints a nice picture of whether somebody's guilty or not. And here in this particular case with Donna, just like it did for Charlie, it is going to abundantly show that she was a main player, like the other Florida Adelsons, in the efforts to come up with this grand scheme, this over-engineered scheme of how they're going to outslick the knuckleheads up there in Tallahassee. And once again, we're going to have a jury up there that none of the Adelsons respect of Florida. They all think they're a bunch of knuckle dragging numbskulls, and they're not going to be able to, maybe get a fair trial at all. But I think it sounds like Donna's still acting like she's going to walk out of there just like Charlie. I think she's definitely fooling herself and just believing the best. And nothing's really ever caught up with them like that before that they might have done in their previous year. She's 74 now, so it's one thing though to plan a murder and it's your first time, you're a novice at it. There's just going to be a number of things you screw up, and that exactly is what happened. It was planned out too long. and definitely hiring hitmen is really one of the dumbest ways you could go about ever planning a murder. And then you hire, these knuckleheads that went up there with a car and had a gun fire in the vehicle, hit the gas line of all things. I mean, if that wasn't like a sign, they should have turned around and headed back to Miami. There, and then you had Luis and Sigfredo, that had Sigfredo couldn't even drive because he was so high and drunk and whatnot during most of that time. So it was really just a mix of this like bad decisions, is really foolish, cruel, evil decisions that wound up going one after the other. And there's a lot of things that could have intervened and stopped them and give them a heads up. Not one of the Adelsons in Florida thought, this is really a bad idea. What are we going to do to the grandkids, to the nephews of Charlie, for example? So Ben and Lincoln, no consideration for them whatsoever. It was all about how can we make our lives better and exterminate anything that's inconvenient. So very very sick, evil stuff. Um, and I think the momentum is definitely going against Wendi Adelson now, and also Harvey. And I was on Court TV the other night, and those of you that saw it, you can go back and look at it. If you go to their website, I believe if you just type in my name, also Tim Jansen was on there, and believe it or not, I was really surprised because of the question at the very end was there more Adelsons to be arrested or words to that effect, and Tim went first, and he actually completely backtracked what he'd been doing for 10 months, where he talked about how Wendy's not going to be charged. Wendy would have been charged by now if there's any kind of evidence on her and all that kind of stuff. So he actually did an about face and said that basically every trial that comes up, there's more and more evidence against him. And so he expects more indirectly without mentioning Wendi and Harvey. But in any event, so yeah, even the pitch man for Wendy's now changes tunes, so that was good to see. And of course, I gave my opinion on that, which is there are going to be definitely more arrests and convictions on more Adelsons after Donna's convicted. So in any event, so these kind of motions, let me just say, as a defense attorney, that's a routine kind of thing that defense attorneys file, especially on a murder case. You expect them to fight and try to keep out the most damning evidence against your client. If you're the defense counsel, you got to do that. Otherwise, you're really ineffective. So we don't want to see ineffective assistance of counsel where it can turn around and bust the case on appeal. So it was definitely the routine kind of motions, like I said, that I would expect. And so in the end, it's not gonna help Donna. All that evidence is gonna show that she was more than just a innocent bystander in this thing, just sort of passively aware of it. But no, she was an active participant, and you don't need a whole lot of evidence to show if somebody is a co-principal on a felony charge. All you need to show is that they have some involvement, however slight, and that can be enough in most jurisdictions to get a conviction. So where you look out, if you're the lookout for when the cops are coming, a crime's going on, you're just as guilty as a person that does the actual deed, whether it's like murder or a robbery, what have you. So most all states have these felony murder rules where if you're helping out in any way, you're just as guilty as a person that actually committed the act of violence. So in any event, I would say that the other thing that I noticed was on the witness list that we had, that Rashbaum put out. If you remember when the initial case management conference for Charlie came out, Daniel Rashbaum said there was going to be 3 weeks of witnesses for the defense. And I thought, 3 weeks of witnesses? I mean, they're not fact witnesses. There's nobody that actually saw what was going on, how they planned and actually executed the murder, because they're down in Florida and they never present any really alibi defense or anything like that. So, so as it turns out, we just had 2 witnesses, Charlie and just one other, which was Wendy's lawyer. So what Rashbaum did again, like he did last time, is he listed all the state's witnesses as his own witnesses. And what that does is it basically makes the prosecution sort of second guess themselves and think like, well, maybe there's something helpful that those witnesses will say that maybe we shouldn't call them and stuff. So it's more like a psychological maneuver to try to put off, your opposing counsel and make them second guess themselves and doubt themselves on whether they should call a witness or not. So that's all I think that is. And because he really doesn't have a whole lot of witnesses to present evidence to actually direct to refute uh, the facts that show that Donna was involved. So the first witness, besides that cast all, adding all the state's witnesses, was Wendi. And Wendy's already listed as a state witness. So they somehow decided to go ahead and add her as well. And that's something that probably is a highlight that they don't really want her to testify because she's a terrible witness for the defense. And it really hurts the defense on these previous trials. And she's really going to do damage for her mom. And I think you're going to see the chemistry between Donna and her mother, which is really going to be fascinating for the jury to see. You're going to see Donna really being pretty livid and angry at her daughter, I think. And the way Wendy's constantly deflecting questions, not answering a simple, straight question. And I think they're going to get even more details on how much she hated Tallahassee. And I hope they bring some more rebuttal evidence to show that she did hate it, desperately wanted out of there. And also go into more detail, even like with Stephen Webster, on what kind of case they had against Wendi in the contempt motion, where she was looking at being not only fined and sanctioned by the judge, but also possibly put in jail for what amounted to an allegation that Stephen Webster thought was definitely provable for putting false information on a financial affidavit to the tune of nearly $400,000 to $500,000. And we also have the stolen Markel heirloom from a World War II Holocaust survivor. So that's never been turned back over to the Markels as well. So those are the kind of things that are going to really come back to bite the Adelsons at trial if the prosecution brings that out. The second one that was added was Susan and then Rick. And I believe those were the two that were in the room when Wendi was talking about how Wendi is basically not answering, not concerned about Charlie. And there's that disconnect about whether she said, I never said you were, or oh, yes, you were, that kind of dialogue. So that's what those folks are going to talk about and try. I anticipate anyway. And they're going to try to basically set the scene that, this is like a normal conversation. And Donna was not going to really seriously flee for Vietnam kind of thing. She was possibly going to return some months later. She's just trying to cool her head. So they're going to try to put some spin on it that way. And then the next 4 through 7 on the list, they're basically friends of Wendi, I would say. That's what they look like anyway. So they're not sure exactly what they're going to want to have friends of Wendi testify about. But in event, they may not even call them. So it remains to be seen. So a lot of these witnesses are just put out there in case I do want to call them and present something to support a theory that they have for Donna. The next one is a stock the bar, either host or another guest that was given the invite. Keep in mind the bullet bourbon that Wendi picked up at the ABC liquor store that was 40 minutes out of the way, that she also went by Dan Markel's house, which I've maintained all along is basically a crime scene inspection for her to do that and go way out of the way just to get some bottle of bourbon. Bullet bourbon is really a telling tale on what was really going on that day with her involvement. And as you may note, that's what Charlie was really harping about after he got convicted. He really seemed to put the most of the blame on Wendi for driving to the crime scene a little over an hour after the murder effort happened. And like Charlie said, a friend of his said it's 1 in a million chances that she would happen to drive by that close in time. So if the jury thinks she was involved, then Charlie was involved as well. And that's exactly the way it works. So he got that right. Number 9 is Ben. Ben, it escapes me. I didn't write the last name down, but there's a Ben there. Somebody can add to that which Ben that is. It escapes me right now. The 10th and 11th one, there were a couple of inmates, and I believe those were inmates when Donna was there, but from what I can tell, they were not inmates when Katie was there. So initially I thought, well, they're probably ones that can put some kind of statement against Katie and maybe some admission she gave or whatnot. So, but they don't really seem to be tracking with when Katie was there, but that remains to be seen. And then they also have Garcia on there, who is actual trigger puller. He's convicted of the murder of Professor Markel for being the one that actually stepped out of the car, walked up to the car of Dan Markel while he's in the garage, and then proceeded to do that horrific killing. Um, and then we also have the uh, the Newland investigator for the state attorney's office. He's listed as a witness there, so not sure why they want to go after him, but they maybe want to ask him if he's interviewed these other folks and dug up any other dirt on them or something like that. So it's nothing of an alarming or concern for me if I was a state attorney prosecutor. The 15th and 16th ones added are a couple of realtors. Those are a couple of realtors there in the Tallahassee area, and so I think it'd be curious to see what time window did Wendi start looking for realtors to supposedly buy a house. And even though she like was under contract one time, she pulled the contract and backed out once that got basically Donna stirred up, and Charlie had to make some kind of commitment follow through to make sure that no, you don't need to buy a house. We're going to take care of Dan, so don't worry about it. So pull the plug on that deal, and that's exactly what happened. Next, we have an attorney that was initially an attorney for Charlie. And so when Charlie got arrested, for a while, there was a guy named Oscar that was his attorney. And he was one that also signed off that statement with I believe it was four other attorneys signing off for all the Florida Adelsons, saying that they had nothing to do with it. And it was fanciful fiction to think that anybody says that there was evidence against them. So I think that, as I've said before, I think the states may be calling these attorneys to talk about how they coordinated with with um, with the actual murderers, the trigger pullers, the hitmen, with their attorneys, and conspire to help keep their clients from talking to Detective Isom and the FBI. We also have Descalzo, that was initial attorney for Donna, that came up for that initial hearing where she said Donna was being subject to cruel treatment in the jail. And not sure why they'd want to put her on there as a lawyer. There's not a whole lot she could say, I would think, to in Donna's defense. And then you got the attorney-client privilege issues. So that's sort of like a head scratcher for me. Then they also have a Linda Bailey. Supposedly she might be called as an expert in some family law. So I suppose she's there to maybe refute and bolster what Wendi's attorneys to say, and refute what Stephen Webster said. But regardless of whether Wendi was facing any possible and actual jail time or contempt of court by the judge, at a minimum, Dan had the authority to get her fired. She was only working there as an adjunct professor, which is like a contract at will employee, and she was only teaching one course. So that was not a whole lot of employment there. And Dan being a full-time tenured professor, being highly sought after for international engagements and criminal law. He held all the power in that relationship that they had as a married couple with the FSU Law School. And the last one I'll note is a guy named Eddie. He's also a PI there in the local Tallahassee area. So what might likely happen is he's the one that went into the jail and interviewed those inmates that might have something to say pertaining to any admissions of other inmates there, potentially Katie, but not sure about that. So in any case, that's all I have for right now is in my opening. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the 9:04 time frame. So if you do have questions, if you can put a red emoji, it'll let me know that you actually have a question for me as opposed to group chatter there. 1 second here. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Kathy, you're asking, can you tell us why the Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson case are not death penalty cases? That was because when they tried the hitman, which is Sigfredo, Luis Rivera had already cut a deal, so he was not subject to the death penalty at that point. He initially would have been charged with that as well. So you got the hitman and Katie all charged with the death penalty. But when a jury came back on Sigfredo and only found life without parole, then what the prosecution decided is, well, nobody else is going to get the death penalty if we couldn't get it against the actual trigger puller. And so that's why they made the decision, as a lot of district attorneys do. They figure, well, we're not going to try to go after the folks that really were the ones behind it. And so I really look at it as a but for test. But for the Florida Adelsons, the hitman would have never killed Professor Markell. They didn't know him. They had no idea who this guy was 7.5 hours away. And whether Luis might have killed somebody in the past, we don't know. Whether Sigfredo might have, I don't know. But they both have propensity for violence, definitely. But to kill an innocent man like that, and drive that far, obviously they were hired to do it. And so I think that regardless of the whether the hitman got death penalty or not, I would definitely go after the Florida Adelsons with a death penalty, because you'd actually get it. I mean, there's I don't think that makes sense that a jury would look at an argument from Rashbaum saying, well, the trigger puller didn't get the death penalty, so why would we have Charlie or Donna get it? Now Donna probably wouldn't be facing the death penalty because she's so old, and she probably, by the time all the appeals are exhausted and whatnot, probably not a much of an exercise of a sound judgment for the state to do that. But definitely for Charlie and Wendi, I would definitely go after that penalty if I was state attorney chief down there. So good question. New York Patriot lady. Yeah, I think Dan Markell did not believe in the death penalty, so that is a true statement. Of course, sometimes people have different views when you have strike that close to home, but we just don't know what his position would have been for something like this. And I do think that there's been a lot of folks through projects that defend folks that are on death row and whatnot. There have been a lot of folks that have been exonerated, not just reasonable doubt, but actual DNA clears them outright. So there's been a lot of that kind of issues that have gone on that are disturbing and troubling for our justice system. Eyewitness identification is one of the primary reasons why folks get convicted of murder and get put on death row, and usually it's eyewitness testimony. And I just attended a CLE course on that recently, and it showed how historically it's very flawed. And so here you don't have an eyewitness testimony that really's sinking, trying to sink Donna at all. It's really Donna's own words and actions that are going to sink her on this. So in a case like this, or a case against Wendi or Charlie, all their own actions would really prevent something like that from ever overturning a conviction. So all right. So Julia Nielsen saying, since it's illegal in Florida for lawyers to influence prospective jurors, could Rashbaum media interview replete with inaccuracies be problematic? He said that in an interview that he was going to. I think that was somebody else, and I take that back. But that's not an issue. I mean, people aren't going to remember what he said, and I think that actually, the more you try to make a big deal about, have you seen what's in the media and what's your opinion, all those kind of questions that he had on his questionnaire, that was really focused on mostly on um, the live streamers and channels like this one, where he was most concerned about which channel are you watching, what's your opinion of the guilt and innocence. So it was really focused on YouTube channels more than anything, which I thought was interesting. But I think the more you focus on that, from my experience, jurors are actually going to be more inclined to go look it up when they get home, even though they're told not to do that. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword. You foot stomp it too much and highlight it too much, and you really raise the interest of the jurors when they get home. Lon Lit is asking, did defense file motions in part to get info from the prosecution's responses about what they're planning to do? No, I think those are just routine ones. They were not really, like I say, robust motions. They're sort of more like they went through the motions just to file something, have something on there to say they tried to keep out that damning evidence. So that's all I look at it as. Sophia, you're asking, is there more evidence on Wendi that we are led to believe? Oh, of course, there's more evidence out there. Jack Campbell even said there's more evidence. We haven't seen all evidence. And just like we saw new evidence against Wendi that was brought out in Charlie's trial, for example, or text message to Dan about whether he was going to be, where he was going to be on the window of 14 to 18 July. And of course, he gets gunned down on the 18th. So, and they already had set visitation, and Wendi was down in this is a text she sent in the first week of July. So that is pretty clear, and that's what I argue as a prosecutor. That's when the murder plotting was taking place when she was down there. So, okay, glad it sounds good. Appreciate that. Watercolor Mama, you're asking, are these motions more aggressive showing because of Alex Morris, Roshbaum? Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to read the rest of that, but I would just say that if you get two lawyers, you're going to get more motions. That's pretty much par for the course. And he was hired to do some extra prep work like that. And so if you notice it, Alex Morris signed. I noticed one of the motions, and I think most of these newer motions that weren't a redo from Charlie's, they were signed by Alex. So he's trying to earn his money, and so that's and like I say, it's not too aggressive because it's sort of like you can tell by reading them, they don't really expect to win these motions. That's my impression as a criminal law attorney. Thanks, True Crime Wifey. Yeah, it's I really appreciate all your guys following of this case. And I was talking to a cousin of mine when I was in New York City, and she was mentioning, because I told her that basically YouTube, it shows the demographics of the followers, and I've told you before, and John's shown you what we have for main cities that are following this case that were probably replicated across all channels that follow the Markel murder case. So I would say that also the age breakdown. It's like there's really not a lot of folks that follow this case that are under 40. So my cousin was telling me, it's like there are a lot of followers of true crime that are under 40 that are in their 20s and whatnot. And basically, but I would have to do that on TikTok. So I talked that over with Ben and John, and Ben got me set up on TikTok. And so what I'll do is actually have dual live streams at the same time doing this YouTube one. I'll have one on TikTok as well. So, but Ben said I need to have 1,000 subscribers. So I know he put out a notice saying if you guys can sub on that, so we can get to 1,000, then we'll do that dual live stream. Because, like I say, this is like a really probably one of the most bizarre cases you'll ever find in true crime, and the fact that it's gone on so long, and the politics that have interfered with the case that are fallen by the wayside now. It's great to see, and so it's going to make justice all that much sweeter in the end. Aunt Nancy is asking why they're going for the smaller courtroom. I mean, they're basically trying to say it's like a mob mentality, and people had their phones on, or and they can intimidate the jury or whatever it was. I forget the details, but it's just sort of like they're throwing stuff over the fence. It really wasn't anything that had any true significant legal rationale for it. And it's probably, it looks like it was written by Donna. That's the way I take it. A lot of those witnesses, I think they're witnesses that Donna wanted to have on there. So I think Donna's really trying to call a lot of the shots here. So I think the attorneys are trying to appease her. Which courtroom you're in, that's and to file a whole motion on that. Most attorneys aren't going to care about that. And you're going to have more people probably standing outside the courthouse, and more is going to probably draw more attention if they're not allowed, if not that many folks are allowed inside the actual smaller courtroom there. So I would hope that the judge would deny that. And I think even if we're in the smaller one with the media access credentials John will have, I don't think that'll be a problem for us being able to do the live stream. But yeah, it's just let them file it. I don't have a problem with that if they want to do that because the client wants it, and let the judge make the right call on it. So that's fine. No worries. All right, Hummingbird, you're asking, why do I think Janine Driver is so convinced Wendy's body language in 2014 police interview shows innocence? I believe you're talking about that's a body language person that I believe I might have been on court TV with her. And I was like, I about fell out of my chair when I heard her talk about how Wendy sounded credible and the crying seemed legit and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, she just doesn't know this case enough. I seriously doubt she sat through the many hours that Wendy was in on the interview. So, and I noticed that also about there was also an attorney in a criminal defense attorney in Dallas that was talking about how Wendy seemed credible. So I was the only one on court TV that said Wendy did an absolute disaster job on the stand, and then it really helped sink Charlie. So, but anyway, as people study the case longer, they're definitely going to see what you all see who are following this case so much with awesome dedication. Okay, nap connoisseur, you're asking, did Charlie not really know that Wendy went to the crime scene the day of the murder? Why wouldn't an attorney let him and Donna know prior to the testimony? Well, first you got to understand, none of these folks have planned a murder before. Donna was desperate. She's looking at losing her job, looking at being facing the court for stealing the Markel family heirloom from the Holocaust surviving aunt, great aunt, I believe it was, of Dan Markel. And if it comes down to it, where you're wondering how many days do you have to wait to have this thing kicked off and successfully executed? Keep in mind there was that botched effort 4 to 6 June. Apparently there's another effort the year before, and through some kind of source in the jail, Charlie spent $50,000 and the folks just ran off with the money. So you had bumbling Charlie not able to really get reliable folks to do the killing. So I think Donna, excuse me, Wendy was just beside herself. She's sort of getting frantic and desperate, and she probably wanted to go over there because nobody was hearing anything about what was going on. So she was expecting a call long before she showed up there in the 12:30ish, 12:20, 12:30ish mark and that afternoon. So, and I think it shocked her that she saw crime scene tape, and she did drive all the way up to like right next to the house there, the house next door to the house that Dan Markel was living in, along with the kids. And when she never asked for the kids, I mean, those two things, driving the crime scene and not asking about her kids' safety and asking what the heck's going on with all the squad cars, evidence processing vans, crime scene vans in the driveway of Dan's house and the whole street blocked off. So those two things right there are enough to have any juror see right through it that she was involved as well. And then you got, you know, close to 200 indicators as well that she was definitely planning this and needed it to succeed because she was the biggest benefactor for this. All right, Cindy, you're asking about this has to be brutal for Wendy having to testify so many times on that she's going to go down too. What do I think? I'm surprised they were going to arrest her at all after that. Well, I think Wendy was really irritated having to come up there and testify. I think she pointed the finger enough at her family. She thought she'd never be in there having to testify at all back when this thing was the planning was going down. And so they probably didn't know the fact that you could have the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent be trumped by a Florida statute. I don't think the Adelsons contemplated at all. That's really a unique statute. For them to rely on, for Georgia and Sarah to rely on. So, yeah, so being able to force her to talk about what she was doing during during the time frame that Dan was murdered and the days and weeks leading up to that, also about her book. I mean, there's so many nuggets and daggers that they can go after Wendy on, where she just basically implodes on the witness stand, and she's getting worse. I think the first couple times she was pretty confident that that she was able to fire back and deflect against the questions from Georgia. But I think this last time Georgia really rattled her. So now I do think it's going to be. I think she's really fearing having to go back there and really being exposed even worse this next time. Excuse me. Serendipity Smiles is asking, what are the chances that Wendy's arrested just for trial like Charlie was? If so, would we know about a grand jury convening or would it be a surprise? They can keep that a surprise. Normally, after they have a grand jury meeting in Tallahassee, they normally make the arrest the same day or the following day. but they could keep it under wraps and strategically just hold on to it till the right opportunity, they believe. And so I think that I think there's a good chance she could be arrested beforehand, and but most likely, I think it's going to be after Donna is convicted, sort of like they went after Donna within days after Charlie's conviction, but they had to rush it up because they knew she was fleeing the country. So she would have escaped if it wasn't for that tip off, that alert that was phoned in by that bar owner down there in Miami area. New York Patriot lady is asking predictions for John and whether Donna will take the stand or not. Normally the attorneys are going to strongly tell the client whether to take the stand or not. I think this case, it's probably going to be Donna wanting to take the stand. She's going to be chomping at the bit, ready to go, and talk in defiance. So remains to be seen. I'd say it's probably more likely than not that she does testify. I think John probably thinks the same as I do. Pretty positive about that. Okay, you're the 1,000 in the chat. Okay, cool. From Australia. Junebug, you're talking about how you recently saw a jury who was tasked with serving the death penalty. Talk about the trauma post making that decision. You'd never thought about that. They have to live with the rest of their life. Yeah, I mean, and so what they do is they also through jury selection they try to exclude the folks that could not, have a hard and fast rule and could not consider the death penalty. So folks that are open to the death penalty, those are yeah, it is a serious decision. I try to emphasize that when I do defense work and I'm doing arguments in front of the jury that you don't want to have a jury have second thoughts, sleepless nights, and a guilty conscience on their decisions. So hopefully we always do have jurors that take this serious, but they don't always take it serious, and it's really incumbent upon good trial attorneys to kick off the folks that they can see that are troublemakers or not really paying attention, have some other agenda, and are not about doing the right thing and upholding justice and including the rights for the accused. So you don't want to have a runaway mob type a jury on any kind of case, no matter what the charges are. And I think even the most gracious Phil Markel even talked about how he was glad to see that Charlie got a fair trial. I mean, talk about the guy's been waiting almost 10 years for one of the planners of the murder of his one and only son, and even he with his big heart wanted to make sure that Charlie got a fair trial. So I mean, you just don't find nicer people than the Markel family, and it's and the fact that they've been denied visitation all these years for all intents and purposes against the two grandkids, Ben and Lincoln. It's just a abomination. It's a crime. It's a crime of the highest order and most despicable to see. So, in any event, their days of justice, it's going to come back to bite them and burn them really bad. So, um, that's pretty much a guarantee. You get that evidence for a jury, they're going to be ready to drop the hammer big time on any of these remaining Adelsons, including Donna, and they better bring that out against Donna, the visitation issues. Yeah, Gerard Unlimited, you're saying there's some damning phone calls between Sigfredo's first lawyer, who's Jim Lewis, who's on the witness list and associated with the Adelsons, and also Katie. Are they able to be admitted as evidence? Well, we normally don't admit phone calls per se, but there's always exceptions to that. So they may try to admit the phone calls, or they may just have it that kind of testimony be admitted by Jim Lewis, and so it's definitely putting a lot of fear in the defense attorneys when they see all these lawyers put on the witness list. I have never seen a case like that before. But these lawyers sort of locked horns at the request of the Adelsons, and they try to do their best to have the hitman be quiet and Katie be quiet. But as it turns out, you had one of the hitmen flip, and the other hitman, he was it was just too much overwhelming evidence. They had him on camera. They had too many things that showed absolute proof that he was up there. He drove up there and he stayed overnight up there, and they basically hunted Dan Markel down like an animal. And so that vicious, brutal, heinous crime. The Adelsons are worried about these lawyers, contacting these lawyers, so their clients don't talk to the police and flip on other hitmen or other planners of this. So yeah, it's that's proof positive right there that Florida Adelsons were involved. So I'm really happy to see the state pursue that. Paramedic Smith, you're thinking Wendi might be arrested soon as she leaves the courtroom. That could be a very strong possibility as well. I just think they may have a lull between the time Donna gets convicted, because if Donna doesn't get convicted, then they'd probably be too afraid to go after Wendi. So that's sort of weird how they didn't have enough confidence in their skills and the evidence to be able to interpret the evidence to believe that they could charge at a minimum Charlie and Donna together, right? So um and so that's what I'm saying. They're sort of doing all the same thing over again, which is really unnecessary. At least charge minimum two of the Ailsons, but I would have charged all four at the same time. Just get this thing over with, and you would come out on top. You would get a conviction on all of them. So, Lord Pender, I do have an office I relocated from McKinney. It's now in Denton, Texas. So that's where my office is now. I still have the same phone number, but I will be changing my phone number here in the near future as well. Kira Leslie, you're saying I prayed Don and Harvey his tablet delivered as my mother and didn't delete anything and said something incriminating. Yeah, I think there's going to be more, maybe another motion coming out on what they seized out of the high rise for Charlie and, excuse me, Harvey and Donna. So that I think that's going to still be something that we may or may not see, depending if it's sealed. I already talked about. No, I don't think Wendi will be arrested right after she testifies. So I've already said the motions for the defense to keep that evidence out of the going to Vietnam. That's not going to be excluded. They're trying to say it was too much of a tenuous link between the time of the murder and her trying to flee. But what the judge is going to look at is the timing of the flee. She thought she got away with it for so long, and then suddenly when Charlie's arrested and convicted of it, and days after conviction, she's like scrambling to get out of the country because she's fearing that she could be next. And exactly that, I'm talking to Dan Roshbaum. According to what she's saying, it sounds like Roshbaum said she could be arrested, trying to leave the country, which means there's already a warrant for arrest and they're going after her. So she was running scared, and there's no two ways about it. They're not gonna be able to do a good job of trying to make the jury think that, oh, this is a normal routine vacation to Vietnam. So that's not gonna fly at all. First one, you're asking for a link for the court TV one. I tried doing that. I'm not tech savvy enough to do it, but anyway, I did see that. Actually, it's on my. If you go to, I still have it named under Jury Trial Mentor. So if you go to X on Jury Trial Mentor, I did have it posted there. So that's another way you could find it. Otherwise, I know there's some other channels on YouTube that have posted it, including Judy of AA Legal Focus. Meredith 2 cents. I covered that last time. Just to quickly recap that Charlie's needed there to box in Donna, to make sure Donna's story doesn't change from what Charlie said about she was aware of this bogus extortion, which is really more of a robbery on a layaway plan. And so the story's not going to get too out of control, and she's not going to be able to point the finger back at Charlie through her counsel by having Charlie there. So it's really going to rattle the defense. All these lawyers coming in to testify, or at least put on the witness list. It's going to be a lot of legal wranglings to try to deal with that for the defense. Yeah, the trial starts September 17th. That'll be the jury selection. Jade Roscoe, the style and language you're asking about the motions. I mean, it's just sort of like I said, I'll just characterize it as there's not a lot of substance there. It's more like they're just doing it as a because they're supposed to do the at least the bare bones minimum to try to have something on file for the judge to rule on. So it's and they know it's going to be denied. So if you know it's going to be denied, why spend that much effort on it, right? JC is asking in the end, what does Rashbaum get out of this where he can't win it all? I mean, he takes both these cases knowing he's going to lose. So, but he's got his money. So, he's probably looking at between the two of them, probably at least $1.5 million, let's say. So, he's willing to do that, and he'll have other cases down the road. People forget about him on this case most likely, and he'll be able to establish new clients. But most defense lawyers, even in Miami, probably don't see the kind of clients like the Adelsons that are charged with murder. Yeah, Lord Pender, I do wish this case had more media attention. And one of the factors I considered when John talked me into it, that I thought it was really outrageous that the Markells are really having to suffer through this, and with the visitation especially, and all this nonsense about you know the other Adelsons will never be charged because there's not enough evidence out there. So my TikTok name's the same thing, Carl Steinbeck. So my X name it does have jury trial mentor, but I think it also has my name as a subtitle or something. Hey, there's LJ. Hello. You meant to add, wouldn't you agree with the Markells would honor Dan's values and beliefs by opposing the death penalty? I think the DA would heed their wishes. And so I would say that, district attorneys are not always bound by what the victim is written about. And that's their own independent discretion. And even if the family doesn't want it, a lot of times DAs, they're not bound by what the family wants. And, what it helps do a lot of times is gain leverage. So you can maybe get somebody to plead guilty, otherwise go contested. So just like you're having all these Adelsons go contested on these cases, you go to the death penalty route, and you'd probably start, maybe that'd be the biggest dynamite thing to do to bust up their hiding behind their lawyers and wanting to go knock down, drag out in a courtroom. So that's what I like about going to the capital punishment route. Okay, Linda. Hey, how are you doing? I'm sorry you think that I'm wrong in saying Donna's old for age. No, 74 is not that old, but I'm telling you, if you could live in those kind of conditions and in a prison conditions for her age, or a jail as she's currently in now, where the food's not good, and you don't have your own privacy like you're used to, and your mind's sort of eating away, and you don't get the fresh air and sunshine and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really taking a toll on your body, and so it's it's not no, 74 is not that old, but if you're in jail, it's going to be it's really a hardship, way worse than somebody much younger. So that's the main point I'm trying to make. And if she is convicted and sentenced to the penitentiary, which I'm predicting is a slam dunk win for the state, that's you're going to see her. You're going to see her really change radically fast. So she may be looking okay now, but being 74 and then closing in on 80, let's say, and being in the Florida State prison system, and yeah, it's really harsh. So you really are too old to be enduring that kind of thing. And from what I've seen, I mean, most criminal defense lawyers don't have clients that old, and they don't have them that old for a reason. Because most 74-year old, or I guess it was 64 when she was planning the murder. Most 64-year-olds aren't planning murders. So Yeah, Clint Adams, 32. You're asking, can regular people get in? Yes, you can. You're wanting to go and watch, so you're so intrigued. Yeah, I would say go ahead and try to attend the trial. Definitely, I think they will have it in the bigger courtroom. I just can't see the judge throwing that um, throwing out the larger audience for that tiny courtroom there, just to mainly appease Donna. It looks like to me. Patty, in you're saying in the motion requesting to dismiss the charges twice, the defense complains that the prosecution made a decision in order to be strategic. If that's a bad thing, well, they're trying to say that the prosecution was strategic in delaying the charges for so many years that they never had a chance to, um, by basically having charges against Donna, they didn't have a chance to pursue the defense um, subpoenas for for example, the SunPass records of the vehicle that Harvey and Donna were in. So that they're trying to say that, hey, if you don't charge earlier, this is like prejudicial to due process, and the charges should be dismissed, or at a minimum, the kind of evidence be excluded. Where, if you remember, Sergeant Corbett testified about how the vehicle that Don and Harvey in, where they were waiting outside of Charlie's house to do the money drop the day that Dan Markel got gunned down in his garage. That's what they're trying to really keep out, because that's another really strong data point that that Donna was the one carrying the bags of money to give to Charlie, that then in turn gave to Katie. So that's very damning evidence. The jury's going to totally believe that's what it was for. So basically trying to. They're not going to get dismissed, but they're also not going to keep it out. Yeah. So maybe that evidence would have shown something, but the best evidence is really where they're at is the cell phone records. The SunPass records aren't as accurate in terms of showing where the vehicle is and what speed they're going and that kind of stuff. So in any event, I think that's all that evidence is coming in. Lord Penny, you're saying Court TV needs at least one dissenting opinion. That's the only reason she argued that. I don't think she really. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. If that's her profession, whatever. It's not recognized in court as any kind of reliable expert testimony, body language. So for that Janine Driver or whatever her name is, that's it's just not something you would consider in the courtroom. Yeah, T. I just sort of did a catch-all tonight for those motions. They're not going to be having that kind of evidence thrown out. The judge is going to allow that evidence to come in, just like he did in Charlie's trial. So it's not a big deal. It's so damning for defense, so they have to do that to exercise due diligence as attorneys for Donna. So that's fine, but it's not coming. It's not going to be suppressed. Let's see. We got here also. Caro, you're saying you're curious about what else Katie knows. You're asking if I think that she'll divulge all when Sigfredo exhausts all of his appeals. Any idea how long it might take? I think she's probably going to speak even more truth this time around. Not be as afraid to do so, and I think she also realized what this life without parole really means. So I think she might be really trying to come up with the best memory she can this time. Okay, you're saying put my TikTok link in my channel. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Thanks. And Lord, you're also saying what a shame Wendy still has that ring. Yeah, I mean that's it's terrible, but you know what? If they bring that out in court and they charge Wendy, that's going to be I'll at least be thankful that that testimony is coming out, because that's definitely going to be I would say a top 10 or 20 items that a jury would consider her guilty on, because it really reveals the level and depth of hatred of all the Markells, just not Dan. And in essence, it's really hatred towards the boys. Because if you hate the boys, Markel family up in Canada, you really do hate the boys as well, in my book. Yeah, Jody Langley, you're saying of all the many motions, do you have any thoughts on them stating that due to length of time to arrest Donna? I mean, that's all they got. It's not going to matter. It's not going to keep them out from being admitted. So that'd be a miscarriage of justice if any cold case crime could be uh, could be basically thwarted from having a successful prosecution just because it took a long time to gather the evidence. Here they had the evidence gathered right 8 years ago. It's just that the slow prosecution office just sort of drug their feet, and but they're finally starting to pick up some speed and move out. So that's great to see. Maria's asking, do I think Wendy be offered a plea deal if and when she's charged? I don't think they're going to offer a deal. I think they're going to know Wendy's going to fight it to the very end. So I don't see that happening. She's going to do everything she can to walk out of that courtroom just like Charlie thought he was, but she's going to wind up just like Charlie and her mom. Jade Roscoe, that's interesting. You're saying Janine Driver argued that Wendy's palms were up when she said who would do this, showing innocence, but my kids did the same thing at 5 years old. Yeah, it's um, I if that's all you're looking at is which direction your hands are, I would say you got to look at more what they say. And does a crying sound real? As soon as somebody's covering up their face when they're acting like they're crying, and does she know how much Wendy hated Dan, and then she's gonna be crying over him? I mean, it just makes no sense. And her talking about driving the Trescott route because she's trying to come to terms with her divorce and all that. I mean, that's just so outrageous. Sir Tedrick Walker, wasn't Wendy required to give a deposition in court on the 31st of July of 14, and she was desperate for the murder to occur. Otherwise, she was in jeopardy of losing her law license and job. Yeah, not as much as her law license, but at least having to go through the um, the very scary process of somebody accusing you of something very serious like that. So, and definitely the job, she would have lost the job for sure. So, yeah, she definitely was desperate. And there was a deposition coming up. Absolutely. I believe it was continued to August. So, I'm not, it was originally in July, and I think the 31st might be accurate, but I think it might have gotten bounced to August. But in any event, yeah, it was coming right around the corner. And so she was desperate. And that's why I think she couldn't contain herself, and she had to go check out what was going on at Dan's house because yeah, she was going to freak out if they botched up yet again. Okay, true crime wife, you're saying Wendy does have a defense in regards to the boys that morning. It's a Florida law that daycare and preschools call parents if children do not show up by 9 a.m. is related to hot car legislation. And well, she's never brought that up. She never brought that up at Charlie's trial, so I don't know how good a defense that is. You could try to argue that, I guess, but if she doesn't know about it and never said anything about it at the time, then in any event, it doesn't matter that whether school called or not. The bottom line is you would ask questions about what's going on in that house. My kids slept there that night, and how do I know they made it out there that morning? And and people drop the ball all the time on stuff like that, right? They even had the 911 operator botch the call, and it took a while for the ambulance to get there, a lot longer for Dan. He suffered more in the driveway there because in the garage, I should say, because there's some kind of a disconnect with the dispatch trying to get law enforcement to show up. I can't remember all those details of what was botched, but definitely there was like another at least 20-minute delay that took effect because of those mishaps. Stephen R. You're asking, do I think Wendi and her legal counsel are actually working to better review her past testimony? And for when she does, she's on the chopping block. She's had so much contradiction. I mean, she's like a weather vane in a storm. Her testimony's just spin in every direction. She can't keep her story straight. And so the it's it, I don't know how you really coach somebody to be a better liar per se. So if somebody's telling the truth, you can do a better job of coaching. But when she's got a history of just flip flopping all over the place and not coming across credible, they may just want to leave her alone because it's like, how do you coach something like that? Show her what she said in the first trial, show how it changed in the second trial, then show how it changed in Charlie's trial, and say pick one of those. I mean, no matter which one you pick, you're gonna have the others showing that you change your testimony. So, Janie Garnett, you're asking if I think Amy Adler will show up in the courtroom. Don't I don't know if they'll necessarily call her. So that remains to be seen. I don't think they need her to be called as a witness unless they want to bring her in to show that maybe she had all the kind of um advantages that Wendi wasn't having, and Wendy's about to lose her job. So I do think there's a big jealousy factor there. I think I'd heard that Wendi was livid that Amy had talked to the boys on Skype, and so yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I would bring as a prosecutor. I'm just not sure they're going to go down that road though. Yeah, Ray Pasher. Yeah, there's a bunch of new people I've mentioned through a lot of those names already tonight. So if you want to go back, I've just gave a quick rundown on what I expected those folks to testify to. I didn't read off all their names, but I gave a summary of the kind of stuff I expected them to have some relevancy on. But a lot of them are not even going to be relevant enough where I think they're all going to be called. I think there's probably just one of those deals where Rashbaum began sort of puffing and expanding a list that's never going to be executed. Yeah, Sophia, you're asking about Wendy mentioned Monroe Street during the interview, and you're talking about the interview with Detective Isom, and yeah, that's where Sigfredo and Garcia stayed the night before they went to Dan's house. So yeah, that's definitely a slip up. That's something that the prosecution needs to bring out, and I think they will bring it out. Yeah. So Amy Adler was Dan's new girlfriend. Yeah, just to clarify that. YB, you're asking when should we expect a hearing on these motions? Well, it's going to be sometime before the actual jury is selected. So I normally like a week before trial, you're probably going to have that. So, all right, let's see. I'm jumping down here. Carol, you're asking could Rivera know more details about Monroe Street? Um, I, I mean, I think that he can testify that that's where they stayed, and so. But how that information got back to Wendi, the direct linkage to Wendi, we don't know. But obviously, Wendi slipping up and talking about Monroe showed that was really something that was having some kind of consciousness of guilt that was bugging her when she's talking to Isom. So yeah, that's what happens. Criminals they wind up getting focused on trying to do such a great job of steering the detectives away from their involvement, and then they wind up tripping up over themselves that way. Now, kind of, so you're asking, there have been so many police interviews we just haven't seen yet, right? No, there's all pretty much most of the interviews for this case are already out there on YouTube. You just got to look for them, and you'll find them. Julia Nielsen's asking, is the case stronger than against Donna than is Charlie? It's I would say Charlie has more direct linkage to the hitman, but Donna's got enough there, and Donna's own words are going to convict her, and also doing the money drive. So I would say a little bit more as with Charlie, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be strong for both, and so and she will be convicted. So that's all that matters. Yeah, the cats are doing fine, thanks. They're some other part of the house here. All right, jumping down at 9:26. Okay, I got to jump ahead here more. Okay, Pure Vita is saying, do I think Rashmom isn't playing as big a part as her Tallahassee lawyer Alex? Judy was saying that Alex is the one taking the lead. Is this good or bad? Well, you can't make that determination just from based on pretrial motions. I think, and what I've said is I think Alex is mostly there for pretrial motions, for jury selection, and then he's maybe going to take a, maybe up to a 50-50% role with Rashomon. But I think Rashomon is going to probably take most of the key witnesses, uh, both on cross examination of the government's case as well as on their case in chief for the defense. All right, I guess the cat showed up. Lisa Burt, you're asking, do I think Wendi was telling her family she was ready to buy a house in Tallahassee just as a manipulative ploy to get Charlie to speed up the murder? I totally think that was the case. I don't think she was seriously contemplating that. I think she, as much she hated Tallahassee, it had to been a ploy. And if what I would do is try to find out, did she just go to the realtors only looking for a house to buy? But what was she telling her friends? Was she telling her friends and whatnot that she was gonna, stay there? So why would she be looking for a house? And I'm trying to remember. I don't think what we heard from Jeff Ocasio, he was even aware of her looking for a house, right? She was like hating it there and wanting to get to Miami. So why would she be looking for a house and not tell Jeff Ocasio? Another really strange, creepy thing, which also indicates that that was part of the plan as a decoy. Yeah, I agree with you, Denise Wilson. Yeah, she's done for. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, Rabbit Ink. So prosecution will have normally it's like 10 days, 2 weeks kind of thing to be able to come up with their response to this. So, and then there'll be a hearing maybe like a week or so after that. So, um, but yeah, it's they got some time to do written responses. Okay, Trish Gmail, you're saying Wendi was not a benefactor. Okay, well, you must be really new to the case. I don't really know much about this case. If you think that, not a benefactor to Dan's murder. Okay, well, she was able to immediately within a couple days of the murder actually up and leave when she otherwise was court required to stay there until the boys were of age. She never would have been able to leave Tallahassee. She would still be in Tallahassee for another let's say 5 years, and Dan was killed 10 years ago. So she had at least 15 more years in Tallahassee. So the murder didn't help her in any way. And then you look at the financial windfall she's gotten through life insurance, and also she's getting Social Security benefits for the boys, around 5,000 a month. No, there's a lot of things. She didn't have to face contempt charges before the judge. She didn't have to face a deposition. She didn't have to give the ring back. I mean, you could go on and on all this way. This killing Dan's got rid of every one of her problems in her life that she was so much in misery and hate and contempt with against Dan. Yeah, I agree, Maya. But there's so many very knowledgeable people on this case, and I would say you guys collectively, know this case as good as anybody doing a live stream on it. So I highly respect you guys. You guys are really dedicated, following the case well, and so yeah, you guys, nothing gets past you guys. You get right to the nitty gritty details, and that's really where you win and lose cases in the details. So and just following common sense. Okay, my Rodriguez Sorensen is asking, would that Florida immunity statute that Wendi is subjected to apply to Charlie's testimony for his appeal? So, as I take it, you're asking about Charlie's testimony for his appeal. And no, because he was basically, once you testify as a defendant on your own trial, you're called by your own defense lawyer. So that only applies to witnesses called by the state. So the state can never call the defendant to the stand. Only defense counsel can call the defendant to the stand. And so that immunity statute only covers witnesses that are called by the state. So since Charlie was not called by the state, he was called by his defense counsel. Therefore, that all the defense witnesses, none of that immunity applies to them. So just want to make that clarification. All right. Okay. Let's see here. We're almost at 10 o'clock here. So I'm going to do two more questions. Yeah, we're supposed to have the same judge as for Charlie's, which is Judge Everett, which is a really um, no nonsense kind of judge. He does joke around a lot, and in some ways, I think he jokes around too much because I think the jury may not take the cases serious, and they be more inclined to do stuff like send each other text messages and that kind of stuff, and maybe get in trouble. So I would really give the juries more of a riot act with today's social media as an issue. I think there's a much higher, greater chance with having mistrials with today's social media world. And I would, like I say, really give these jurors a riot act and give scenarios on how they could get in trouble and what would happen to them, kind of thing, just to avoid having to have a retrial. Okay, one more question here, and Tattletales, you're saying Wendy blamed her whole family as her backup plan. Yeah, if she was going to get questioned, which she probably expected, I think that was her plan, just throw her family under the bus. It's like, well, surely they wouldn't do that. And she even suggested that they would have done this behind her back because of what she went through with Dan. It's like, well, what was so terrible about Dan? And that was never really fleshed out by Detective Isom. Well, what could you possibly told your family about Dan Markel that they would think they'd have to go to the drastic, extreme, horrific violence measure of killing Professor Markel? So he never made that connection. So that's something I would flesh out at trial, by the way, if I was state attorney. Okay, so that's it. You guys again have a lot of great questions. Thanks for following this case, supporting Justice Markel's. And not sure if I'll be on next weekend. I don't think I'll be on this Sunday night, but maybe a week from tonight, or else that Sunday, or possibly both, depending on where I'm at and what I'm up to. So, anyway, thanks again. Have a great night, and have a great weekend.